my very first assisting gig, very first assisting gig at Westlake. Like they threw me in the fire was Tupac session. None of the assistants would work with him because he would come in with his posse and it would just be a nightmare. And so everyone was scared to work with him. And then I was a runner at the time, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'll work with him. I want to move up the ladder and get in the studio." I was like, "Yeah, bring it on."
Yeah.
So I showed up, and all his people show up, and they're hanging out, they're smoking, drinking. Like hour, 2 hours go by, and he's like, "You ready, dude? You want to start this?" And I'm like, "Yeah. Don't you want to wait for your producer and engineer to get here?" And he's like, "You're my engineer tonight." And I was like,
wow.
fuck. I was like sweating bullets. I was like, he's like, "Can you handle it?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." I had no idea what I was doing.
This was Tupac telling you this.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
I had no idea what I was doing, so I ran and got the tech and like pretended to like, "Oh, we got to tweak something here." And I had the tech like, "Hey, can you bring up the mic? Let's do this, do this." We set up the MPC and dumped the MPC to tape, probably like 4 or 5 songs, and then hooked up the mic and just got the mic going to tape. And I was so lucky to just even get the signal to tape. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just recorded his vocals all night. He just doing one pass after the other, on songs. It was pretty funny.
So was he cool, like working with? That was like your first big thing.
I wouldn't say he was cool to work with, but I wouldn't say he was a dick. I mean, he didn't really talk to me or like hang out with me unless he, needed to talk about technicality of the music, like stop, play, rewind, record, let's get another track, that kind of stuff. But there was no like hanging out, throwing down kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. But I had no idea how big he would end up becoming, like this amazing icon, this legend. It was funny because at the end of the night, they were all passed out, and I was doing like rough mix, and at the time, I remember it was like $75 to burn a CD and take a CD home.
Damn, that's expensive.
Burn a CD of all the songs, and I hand it to him, and that's probably like 2, 3 in the morning, and they got up and left, and he went to go catch Madonna's private jet to Las Vegas, and they showed up to the airport late, so they missed the plane, and I broke down the studio and everything, and I'm like walking out to my car with my duffel bag or my backpack, walking out the car, and I see like their big SUV pull in. They're like, "We missed the plane. We want to keep recording." It's like, oh, fuck. Ended up kept recording till like 8, 9 in the morning.
So who did you do after Tupac, as far as assisting?
Then after Westlake, I got in beef with the manager at Westlake, so I went over to Hollywood Sound. And at Hollywood Sound, that was like the big hip-hop studio of the day, because that's where they did the first Pharcyde record.
Oh, okay.
So all these people who like were on like the good vibe Pharcyde tip were all going over there doing that kind of stuff, and then I ended up engineering. I went from answering phones to assisting on records to engineering the whole second Pharcyde record, which was pretty cool. Yeah. Didn't get a credit though. Thank you guys, appreciate that.
Well, because you were doing engineering your first few years. At what point did producing come in to where you wanted to play more of a creative part?
I've always wanted to do that. It's just being able to get the break to do it.
Well, when was your break?
I don't know. That's a good question. I've only produced actually a handful of records, engineered and mixed a shit ton of records, but a partner of mine, me and him had our own studio in Hollywood, and we just started producing a lot of like local bands and getting stuff signed and doing stuff like that, and that's where like the first real production started coming into play. The first real big record, I guess was Emery was the one I did. Yeah.
I just saw those guys actually. We did an interview, a short interview.
Oh, did the Iwabo kids come in right after?
Well, actually, what happened was
I talked to Devin on the phone, and he said that they were doing an interview, and the Iwabo guys like they passed by each other.
The Iwabo guys were there first, and then the Emery guys came in, and then I got kicked out of the cafe.
Oh.
So as far as Emery, like the first, well, you said that was like the first time you really produced a record.
Yeah.
Like your mentality at that time, and as far as what did you want to do, like what did you want to get across with the band?
Well, it's funny because when I went into that record, I had just completely different ideas than the direction that they wanted to go. They wanted a more safer, softer sounding record. Not so heavy and screamy like their other ones. Which is funny because after that record came out, man, people sent me hate mail and like. A lot of, hardcore Emery fans hate that record that I did. And they're like, "You ruined Emery, why'd you do that?" And I'm like, it's not me, man. They wrote the songs. They wanted to do it like that. I just helped them, make their vision of what they wanted to do. That's you know, what I do on producing, I don't try to like put my stamp on it, put my name on it, and like, ooh, that's a Ryan Boesch record. And you know, you can tell signature sound. All I want to do is make the record that the band really wants to make. You know, just help them, you know, get their ideas out and get them what they're, you know. Of course, you know, I have like I help them with arrangements and stuff like that, programming and stuff like that. You know, that, but to me, all that falls under producing. You know, not songwriting and stuff like that, but you know, just trying to, you know, figure out the vision that the band wants and help them, you know, achieve that vision of the record that they want to get at the end.
Is this a frequent thing with kids? Like, do they leave their feedback for you?
Oh yeah.
With anything?
Yeah, absolutely. That one I got a lot of mean comments like, "You suck."
Since that was like the first time you really produced something, so I imagine that was the first time you really got a lot
That
of
was the
feedback?
first record that I produced that people know about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've done tons of other productions, but that's the one that, like, you know, a massive amount of people actually knew about.
Was that difficult, getting that much response?
It hurt your feelings, of course. You know, I
Yeah.
was so excited for this record to come out, and there was like, you know, Emery kind of had a little buzz right then, and everyone wanted to hear the new record after The Question, because The Question was a pretty big record for them. And then, like, it comes out, and everyone was just like, wah, 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 wah. You know, a lot of the kids, like, really like the songwriting, and there's, like, you know, there's the intricate harmonies and stuff going on in the record and stuff like that, but it's just, it's not nearly as heavy as their other records.
Yeah.
And that, like, you know, had a huge backlash on it. But, it, you know, if you listen to it, it's a really well-written song, I mean, really well-written record. The record is awesome. There's so many cool moments on that record.
How did you meet the Iwalo guys?
MySpace.
Really?
Yeah.
Because Steven said something about how, like, you were just really stoked and you wanted to do the record or something.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I remember I got a friend request from him, and I always check out every band that I get on a friend request.
Yeah.
And then I checked it out, and I was like, holy cow, this stuff is amazing. This blew me away.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can easily hear their influences, and, you know, their same influences as me, and I just, like, latched onto it, and I just fell in love with it. And I sent them a message just saying, hey, I love your music, man. If you guys ever need any help recording or anything, let me know, blah, blah, blah. And I bought a T-shirt, and I bought an EP, and, you know, they sent me some pins and all that stuff. And then they probably had like 50, 60 friends on MySpace then and stuff, like getting 20 plays a day. And, you know, I was like one of the first ones to buy something from them. And then, you know, 3 months goes by, 6 months goes by, and I kept checking in on them. You know, every so often a new song would come in, and I would send them a message like, hey, this is awesome, keep up the good work, blah, blah, blah. And then I heard that they got signed to Century Media, and I was like, man, I got to do that record. That record's so awesome. I just love everything they do. And I have a buddy who knows the owner of Century Media, and he called them up or hit him with the email and was like, hey, Ryan wants to do this Iwabo record really bad. And he said, you know, they want to do it themselves. And they're like, but the label really wanted to push someone to help them do it.
Yeah.
You know, because they were scared, you know.
Oh, okay.
So they put me in touch with Steven, and I just started sending him emails, and then me and him got on the phone and just started talking, and we just hit it off really good.
Yeah.
I guess, supposedly when they got signed, all these other big-name producer guys came out of the woodwork and were like, we want to do the record, we want to do the record. And they were like, we're going with Ryan. He loved us from day one. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
He said that Steven told me that he looked up like his PayPal receipts because like we got on the phone and I was talking to him and he's like, how long you been a fan? Blah blah blah. And I told him I bought a shirt like back in 2 years ago. I bought a shirt and an EP and he's like, and he went back and checked his record see if I was lying. And he's like, you fucking really did, man. That's awesome. He's like, you're doing the record. I was like, fuck yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, their budget was like nothing. It was just the worst budget ever. And, you know, I was like, I don't care, man. I want to do this record. We'll make it work, whatever we got to do. So.
And you guys did that at Ross Robinson's house?
Yeah.
The day I met you was when I was interviewing Ross. Like, how did you meet Ross?
Through my roommate. My roommate used to do, like, personal assisting for Ross and stuff like that. He was, like, personal assistant on the first 2 Slipknot records and Korn and stuff like that. And he introduced me to Ross years ago, and Ross hired me to do some stuff on Amen, like track some guitars and stuff like that.
That band's crazy, dude.
Yeah, it was a weird, fun time. So we tracked some guitars on Amen, and then I didn't see Ross for a while, and we just, you know, kind of stayed in touch, saw each other here and there, and then he called me up one other time and was like, you want to work on some solo West Borland stuff? And I was like, hell yeah. So So I went and worked with him on that for a little bit, and he was really stoked with the stuff I did, and we got along really good. And then he called me up again and was like, "You want to do From First to Last?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah."
Was that Blacklight Burns?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it was Blacklight Burns yet. It was like West
Just West.
first, just starting to do his solo stuff.
Okay.
I don't know if he had technically had a name or something yet.
Yeah.
But yeah. Then Ross called me, asked me if I wanted to do From First to Last, and I was like, hell yeah. So then, the next 3-4 years in a row, I did like almost all the records, that he did for like the next couple of years.
What was it like working with From First to Last? And you did Heroin, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a fun record to do because we went up to Weed, California.
Oh, you guys went in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Went to Weed, California. Sylvia Massey has a studio up there, so
Okay.
we went up there and tracked it all up there. It was cool. It was like one of my first times to really get away and go do a record, out in the middle of nowhere, up in the mountains, and we were just, it was just me, Ross, and the band, and we just stayed up there for probably 6 weeks and did all the basic tracking, everything but vocals, and it was just awesome. Like Sylvia's place is this old theater with just tons of vintage gear, and it was just killer vibe up there just to be secluded away from everybody and just concentrate on making a record.
So you got pretty close to those guys then.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
Those guys are so nice. Like, they're probably some of the nicest kids, I think.
Yeah, I get along with all of them really, really good. Yeah, I still stay in touch with them.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just did, last year we did a track for Command and Conquer.
Oh, yeah?
Video game. Yeah,
Wow, that's
they
crazy.
covered like the theme song of Command and Conquer.
From First to Last of that?
Yeah. It's awesome. It came out really cool. Yeah. It's for EA.
Oh, yeah, sure.
More beers.
More. Might as well, right?
Yeah, it was for EA Games, and right at the time we were doing Norma Jean, and they called me up and were like, "Can you do this track?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can." And I got out of Norma Jean for like 2-3 days and went over and did this track with them really quick, and it came out pretty awesome. The funny thing is though, is we tracked it, we did everything on it, kicked ass on it, turned it in, and then the guy from EA sends me an email and calls me. He's like, "You guys covered the wrong version."
No.
I was like, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah." So then me and Matt just went back in and redid the right version ourselves.
Oh, dude, that's...
Yeah, we went in, tracked drums, did everything. Derek killed it on drums, and we turned it in. It's like, "Oh, wrong version, sorry." I guess there's like I don't know the game that good, but I guess there's like an old version of the song, and then someone did an updated version of the song, and then we were supposed to cover the updated version.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, but we ended up doing one of each.
And then you went right back to Norma Jean.
Yeah.
So, I'm just thinking, like, you worked with so many bands, dude. Like, seriously, I think every band that I've interviewed, you've, like...
Yeah, it's funny, because I went on your website, and I was looking, and I was like, I worked with them, I worked with them, I worked with them, I worked with them. It's pretty funny.
I'm curious about the writing process. You said you had a big hand as far as, like, with the writing process with that Wildest.
No, I didn't write. I just mainly did like arranging, helped with arranging and stuff like that. Like a lot of program parts and help just put ideas and arrangements and stuff like that. I didn't like grab a guitar and write a riff or anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess like more specifically, like let's take a day in the studio. You guys get up, you start working on the record. They come to you with a few ideas.
Well, Steven would mainly come up with all the ideas would either come from old things that Steven jammed or like he would come up with new riffs and then he's a pretty amazing drum programmer, and he would like start programming beats, and then like one person would be on Reason messing with something, and I would be on Logic, and Steven would be on something, and we'd start listening, and John would be like, "All right, I got this cool Reason electronic groove, let's try to fit this and this," and we'd start throwing ideas into the computer. And Steven would start trying to piece them together, seeing what pieces fit, and we'd have like certain sections of songs that we liked, and we'd just kind of start moving them around and piecing them together. And by the end of the day, not the end of the day, it didn't go that fast, but by the time we got a song done, we'd give it to Mikey, and Mikey would learn the drum parts and then start adding his own, flavor to the drum parts. And Mikey actually stepped up to the plate and would just sit there and just learn the songs and could just play them by the end of the day. He was badass.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So, those are pretty intricate drum parts that are going on in those songs.
Yeah. So you're saying you basically, Steven had, like, drums programmed, and then the drums were basically...
Or I forget that program, because he does everything on PC. I think it was like Fruity Loops or something like that.
Is it all in Fruity Loops?
Like all his basic beats, like
Okay.
to write beats with.
Yeah.
I think it was Fruity Loops, and he would write like these death metal beats super fast in Fruity Loops and stuff like that. And then he would just do like a scratch guitar over it with like a pod, and then we'd start, I would come up with like a program section in Logic or something, like, hey, try to fit this into that, and then John would have another piece, and we'd start trying to piece these different electronic pieces to, the rock parts, and then, it was really hard to hear how the songs would come out until they would go in the room and try to jam it out. Then you'd start getting an idea of like, okay, this is going to work.
What about Chris's vocal parts? Like, was that just after everything was done?
She would actually was writing during the whole time. Like once the demo part would be done of the song, we'd give her some on the iPod, and she would actually start writing to the grooves and stuff at home. And then as we actually started tracking the songs, I'd keep giving her updates of the instrumentals and stuff. So she was constantly writing the whole time.
So how picky, I guess, was the process as far as writing the songs? Because from what I hear, there was, the timing. I don't even know what I'm saying because I'm buzzed, dude. But like from what I hear, like as far as what Steven said, like towards the end of it, they felt time was running out. At what point were you able to say that's a song? Let's do it.
I mean, in their eyes, once they got to 3 minutes, they would call it a song.
Oh, okay.
They would be like, oh, we have to turn in 36 minutes of music or something like that, and and then they would have certain ideas of the songs, and then once I actually got them in Pro Tools, I would actually, extend the intros or outros, or we'd make certain sections longer because, you listen to the record and like, I remember Steven telling me some guy in a review called them ADD faggots. Like these are a bunch of ADD faggots, and like you think that's ADD? Wait, you should have heard like the rough versions that like everything changed in like 4 bars, and once we got into Pro Tools, it was like, all right, we can actually extend these more,
Yeah.
And we actually extended parts to go around Krista's vocals and what she wrote and everything too, because we would write certain sections and stuff like that, but you didn't really know how it was going to work until she started doing her vocals on it and stuff.
Okay.
So then once we got in the computer, I'd actually, sometimes extend a section or make something shorter or cut something out and stuff like that. So it was always a work in progress. The songs were constantly changing all the way up till we printed the mixes.
Do you have stories where you'll go places and you'll hear your record being played, or?
It's funny, quick story, like probably about a month ago, I go to this after hours party with my buddy, and we walk in, and they got Playboy Channel on, and all these people are partying, it's like 3, 4 in the morning, and this music comes out on the Playboy Channel, and it was one of my songs that I did, one of my instrumental songs.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. And it was like the first song on my CD. I have a CD that I did.
Uh-huh.
And it was the first song on the CD, and I was like, oh, cool. Someone put on my CD. That's cool, man. And I said it to the guy who owned the house who was having the party. I'm like, oh, that's cool you put on your CD because I came in, and he's like, what? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's my song. And he's like, bullshit. He goes, that's on the TV. And he hit information and like paused the TV and rewound it, and it was this porno called School of Hard Knockers. And they fucking, somehow they got a hold of one of my instrumental tracks and put it in their fucking porno.
That is
There's
awesome.
A chick masturbating to it and everything.
Yes!
Yeah, it was pretty rad.
I'm about to hire you to make porno music.
I told my manager about it and stuff too. I was like, is there anything we can do? Can we go after it? And he's like, you're really not going to get any money out of that. That thing didn't make a lot of money, but they might send you a box of DVDs or something.
Dude, that's
but
so
it's pretty
crazy.
funny, man. Go to the Hollywood after hours party and there's my song on fucking porno on TV.
Oh man, like
when I was in Vegas, I was on mushrooms and I heard Natalie Merchant come on, and I was like tripping, and I was playing blackjack, and I was like trying to explain to the dealer, like, I recorded this song, and I was like tripping, and he's just like, no, you didn't.
Have you ever done mushrooms before you started a record, or while you were recording?
No, but I've done shrooms with bands that I've worked with.
Really?
Sure.
What bands? I have shroom stories too.
I don't know if I should say.
Oh, okay.
No, I did them with From First to Last. I don't care.
Okay,
of course.
cool.
And then Iwaba, we ate some pot brownies.
Oh, well, I mean, pot's not a drug.
No, I don't think so either. But they showed up one night for work. Like I was doing double shifts. I was doing this record with Ross, and then they would come in at like midnight, and I would work with them from like midnight to like 5 in the morning. I was doing like double duty. And they came in at like midnight, 1 in the morning one night, and they were all on pot brownies, just like cooked. It was so awesome. And then like I did a bunch of work that night. Me and Krista did vocals, and Steven was like laying on the couch and just couldn't move. He was just, catatonic, and he was just baked out of his gourd. And I think it was Mikey's first time he ever ate them, and he was having a blast.